festival is held in person in Bali next week. So if you happen to be on the island, please have a look, and maybe there are some parts of the program that you can join. I'm going to introduce the guests for today. So we have Sonia here and Anne-Lot. Sonia is a writer, academic, researcher in the field of language and literature education. She's working on her PhD about language learning through the mindfulness approach. Also philosophy of language and narrative inquiry, which also influences her creative work in the fields of performing arts, literature, and lots of things across these disciplines. I visited Sonia a few times in her Comunitas Mahima in Bali, and she does incredible work across the different disciplines of art. Her latest work is Raya Raya Cinta, which is an anthology of drama scripts, and her project Sebelas Ibu, Sebelas Panggung, Sebelas Kisah, if I pronounce it right, got international recognition. So it's worth also looking into that if you're not from Bali or if you're not Indonesian yourself. And then Anne-Lot, she is a doctor. She's an independent historian and author. She is working on Dutch colonialism and 20th century independence struggles in Indonesia, and at the moment also Southern Africa, or at least she's at this moment in Southern Africa. She obtained her PhD on violence, resistance, and colonial state formation on the island of Bali from the University of Amsterdam, and she published the book in Dutch, De Strijd om Bali, which can be translated as The Struggle for Bali. And she also published extensively on the Indonesian independence war for Dutch newspapers and magazines, and she's often heard as an expert on this topic on Dutch radio and television. And so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll give access to two more participants. And I will highlight Sonia and also Anne-Lot for you, so we can have a good look at our speakers for today. And maybe Sonia, Anne-Lot, welcome, first of all. Thank you for being here. Maybe Sonia, you can start telling us a little bit more about the literary festival and the context of why we're organizing this.
Okay, thank you very much, Sanne, for organizing what is it, especially this international program. So Singaraja Literary Festival is actually a festival that aims to reintroduce the legacy that has been has been the foundation of intellectual in Bali, because Singaraja is famous for being a center of intellectual people, smart people in the past. And this festival is actually want to remembering those victory, and also appreciate what we had in the past. And actually what we have now is to make this legacy appreciated in a better way by young generations. So Singaraja Literary Festival is actually a celebration of what our elder generation had passed on us, the legacy that could be made even greater now by having more discussion, more research, more interpretation about the text. And it is centered in Gedong Kirtia, actually, where the manuscripts or lontar are kept. And now through this festival, those lontar and manuscript is reintroduced again to younger generation through many translation, through Indonesian, through English, and through many performances like theater, like art performance, and also theater, movie, and everything. So
Yeah.
the
Let me
meaning
just,
behind it is,
oh yeah,
yeah,
go
the
ahead.
meaning is to what is it, to embrace again the victory in the past. And having analog here is actually one of the good moment for us, because analog is experience in research about Bali, and especially Singaraja, and now she will present about part of the intellectuals who made the foundation in Bali, Panji Tisna and Mayor Metra, heroes who are, what is it, who are known here in Singaraja, and having analog from the perspective of Westerners gitu ya, Westerners, to what is it, to give what is it, perspective on how Westerners see us as the center of intellectuals in the past. So that is why we conduct this session. And I hope that in the future, next year, maybe we can involve more researcher and intellectuals who do research in Singaraja through this festival. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
thank you so much. I will just briefly say something about that, because for the people who might not be that known with Bali, so Singaraja is in the north of the islands. Bali is, of course, known as a very popular tourist destination. Lots of Dutch people also go there on holiday.
Yeah.
But a lot of tourists focus on visiting the south of the island. And then Singaraja used to be the colonial capital of Bali. And that is also fitting the book that Annelot wrote. And so you both will also highlight Singaraja as the intellectual center of the islands in the past, and maybe also in the future. And it would be great if you can organize the festival in the coming years and emphasize that role of the city.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah. So Annelot, maybe you can introduce us to your research and the book you wrote.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonia, for the invitation. It's a very nice invitation, and also thank you, Sanne, for the introduction. Yes, maybe it's a good idea that I first explain a little bit about what kind of research I did, and what the basic findings of it were, and how I came about that. Yeah, I started this research actually in 2013, so that's already 10 years ago, when I was confronted with pictures of a Dutch war veteran who lived in Paris and who had been fighting on Bali. And at that time, I was just starting to write about Indonesia and the war there for a couple of years. And coincidentally, I had been visiting Bali in 2011. And when I was walking around there, I noticed that there's so much history, and there's so much that I knew there was connecting us, but I had actually no idea why I had studied history in Amsterdam. So when I was confronted with these pictures of the war veteran, I was immediately very much fascinated, because I thought Bali is a place that in the Netherlands we really, we look at it as a place for tourism. It's a very peaceful place, and it was very hard for me to link that kind of violence that was portrayed on these pictures. So I decided to investigate that, and it became a very big research, and eventually it turned into a PhD. So it took a lot of years. I spent like 7 years researching it. And of course, I started out researching a couple of pictures, but it became a very big history, because when you go to Bali and you start to research there, you're confronted with such different narratives and such different debates than in the Netherlands, that immediately you also realize that it's a very long history, starting on Bali in 1846 with the first war that the Dutch set out against Bali. Against the city of Singaraja, actually. So I decided I have to start there. And I did the research together with Niketut Sudiani and Nima de Friska Azwarini on Bali, and I visited yearly, and we went around to all the villages and places of interest and talked to a lot of people. And in the end, we managed to talk to about 100 Balinese. So that's was really good for the research, also because when you go to the Dutch archive, you're confronted with the Dutch vision on this history and the experiences of military guys and civil officers, but it's completely different when you compare that kind of material to the oral history on Bali itself. So that was very, very interesting and very essential also for the book. And the book is kind of big, so I will just focus on a few things, a few important points of the book, and then talk about Singaraja specifically. Yeah, so what I already said, there's a long continuity of violence and of political violence that you can trace back into the 19th century. So if you want to start the revolution, it's very obvious for me that it was a very long stretch of history with a lot of patterns that you see repeating itself. And the same goes actually for the tradition of Balinese resistance that was very much overlooked in basically Dutch historiography, and I think in Western historiography, that there was a lot of resistance already from the start, like people like Jelantik and Singaraja. So you can just make like a long continuum of interesting people who at different periods in time stood out and in their own way fought against colonialism. And during the War of Independence, what I found is that the politics of federalism that was instigated by the Dutch in Indonesia to divide the archipelago in different states, and that was basically portrayed as a sort of politics that was also in the benefit of the Indonesian people. What I discovered by looking at the local violence that was set out on Bali, there was a very direct link between the violence and the political strategies. And that actually this federal strategy catalyzed a lot of violence especially in areas where there was a lot of resistance against this policy, such as on Bali. And that also made Bali much more central to the conflict and to the war as part of the state of Indonesia than it was noticed before in historiography. One of the things, or maybe one of the phases of violence that we discovered while we were doing our research was that there were around 50 so-called tangsis on the island. Those are army camps by the Dutch. And we investigated those quite systematically and discovered that in at least half of them, people were systematically tortured and executed there, which was you can understand with that research how the violence was actually put out of sight. And it was also because there were very few international journalists walking around on Bali or independent journalists that these kind of stories never came out. And so the violence on Bali, which was very intense, sort of didn't make it to the archive, and it didn't make it to the historiography. And that is when the oral history is becoming very important, because only in that way you can get these stories. And for me, the big conclusion was also that there was so much more resistance on Bali and initiatives that has been looked at. And one of the things that I discovered in the Dutch reports was the role of Balinese teachers. And you can see that they seem to have inspired the revolution very much. And Singaraja Buleleng was at that time, before the Second World War, like an intellectual and a center of cultural movement and organization. And it was also because a lot of ships arrived in the harbor of Buleleng, coming from Java and other Indonesian islands, and also from Europe. So a lot of debate and discussion was centered there. And it was actually creating an intellectual space where new ideas could develop. And especially teachers seem to have played a big role in that. They were sort of the agents of change at that time. And one of them that I find specifically interesting was Inenga Metra, who was from Singaraja. He was a very interesting nationalist person, organizing a lot of national movement and creating a magazine called Surya Kanta. It's translated as A Beautiful Sun, focusing on change and a different and equal society. And what I learned from a Balinese, memorized from a Balinese veteran, Igusti Nuragpinda, was that Metra was very loved by the youth at that time, a very charismatic person. And that was also why he was followed by the Dutch intelligence police very much. He was actually expelled also from Bali. And then in the revolution, that's what I find very interesting. You see again the role of the teachers becoming very big. Like when the Balinese commander Igusti Ngurah started the revolution in 45, the teachers were there to support him, especially Nanga Metra also had a central role in that. And what you can see in the Dutch archive is that police or military is reporting on the role of teachers as being very strong and mobilizing and the students, which of course the Dutch find very annoying. So we're trying to find ways to work on the teachers, but that was they were very ideologically inspired. And what is quite significant is that Metra, of course, on Bali, he's a local hero, and there's a street name called after him. There is a monument, and the story is known there. And in the Netherlands, we have never heard of him. And then when you look into the Dutch archive, the only thing that I can find about him was actually the date of his death and the sort of surroundings that the military described. And they only basically say at that day we killed 8 what they call terrorists. And that's it. And that's also very significant about the reporting that the Dutch did. I mean, all the reports are full of these numbers and very smear little explanations of the cause of the death. And then you have to go to Bali actually to hear the real story of what happened and who that person was. So that was for me a very interesting story. And the other link that for me with Singaraja was actually when I presented my book in 2021. At the end of the book presentation, I was given a ring by the son of a Dutch missionary. He was called Henk Franke. He was a former resistance guy against the Germans in the Netherlands. And he got a ring during the Indonesian Independence War by the Balinese king from Buleleng, Panjatisna. And his son, I met his son because I looked him up. I tried to find Henk Franke in the Dutch archives, and eventually I found his son by the Dutch phone book and called him, and he still had his father's archive. So that was very, very interesting for me. And in that archive, there's a lot of explanation about what's going on in Bali from a more critical perspective. So that's different kind of material than you get from the normal archive, because he had an anti-colonial perspective. And he was becoming friends with Panjatisna, the king of Buleleng. And that was very interesting because that's a sort of different kind of story than you usually see or focus on. I mean, it's a lot about war and violence. And then you get this friendship actually between these two like-minded people who shared the same vision for a better Bali and for an anti-colonial Bali. And Tisna, he was before the war in the 1930s. He was actually quite a famous author, and he was quite philosophical, and he was also in this intellectual space, just like the teachers were. And Henk Franke and he shared the same ideas. And that caused a lot of problems on Bali in the revolution with the Dutch, because the Dutch were still working on this policy of divide and rule. So they were using the kings again to control the population. And the Tisna didn't want to do that. And he already during colonial times refused to become king because of this colonial system that he didn't want to participate in. But in the end, he did take the role in 1944. And then during the revolution, his conscience sort of played again. And he wrote a letter to the Dutch resident. It's like a governor. And I found the letter in Holland. And he explained why he didn't want to be part of this system, and he didn't want to set in violence against his own people. He had completely different ideas. He wanted development for Bali. So he sort of resigned, and then his brother took over the role of King of Buleleng. And yeah, it's a very interesting story for me also, because it also asks questions like what can we learn from it, and what's, you know, it's like a connection between Bali and the Netherlands also. And they both walked sort of the path of spirituality, build a better future for Bali, and they both refused to be too much into the revolution. Now, and Tisna set up a lot of project plans in Buleleng, like a cinema, like a library. He was developing all kind of things. He was going to India to get inspiration there. And Franke and his wife were sort of helping him with developing all of his projects. And so his son, Christian, gave me the ring, basically because he felt that it helped in the connection between the Netherlands and Bali to give the ring to me. And for me, it's a very, difficult question what to do with the ring. Also, you have so many discussions now about looted art. And of course, it is given as a token of friendship, but it was in the context of a war, of a colonial situation. So I'm very interested in the question also towards Balinese, like, what is the best way to look at it, and what to do? I want to return the ring to Bali, but how to do it, and what is a good way to do that in a way that the story of Pandit Tisna and his friendship with Franke is also being, and the whole colonial context of that is going to be explained in a proper way. So if you can help me with that, Sonia, that will be very interesting.
Sonia needs to tell us what the ring should have. But thank you so much, Annelotte. I just want to emphasize for everybody who is joining, please do ask your questions in the chat. And we also have some more space for questions. You can unmute yourself later. But please, Sonia, your response to what Annelotte was sharing with us.
Yeah. I thank Annelotte for sharing these insights to us. Actually, Sanne is the bridging between us, and I haven't heard about the research in this novel by Annelotte before. Maybe I missed that, but then Sanne inform me about you, and the fact that you presented now your research, and now I also invited family of Pandit Tisna here with us. There are some, and also the family of Maitre. So this will be a great maybe discussion about what should we do with what has been found by Annelotte. And as Singaraja people, as local people, as local person, I want to of course appreciate what you found, and maybe next year we will arrange that you could come offline, and we could plan more strategies to what is it to have deeper understanding about what we are facing right now, especially in the context of your finding in the research. And this festival is actually want to welcome all the insights about Singaraja from many perspectives. Like you said, that this was intellectual center and intellectual space to share the insight. And I think this will be good also if we plan something about your finding with more audience and with involving government, for example, from the art and education department, and also from history department, for example, about the ring, for example. Yeah, what should we do with that? I think we should involve government as well in this special context.
And
I also
Sonia,
hear yes.
Yeah, I was really wondering also, because Annelot was mentioning the role of the teachers in the resistance in Bali, and you are a lecturer in Singaraja at the very moment. So could you elaborate a little bit on that? And do you recognize that still in the teachers today?
Yeah. I want to also put highlight on what Enlot said about intellectual center and intellectual space here, because actually Singaraja is the gate, the first gate to Bali, yeah, and teachers were here, and even the father of Sukarno, our first president, was a teacher. And the father of Sukarno was a teacher, and met the wife from my village here in Baleagung. So I think talking about teachers, and I am now as an educator also, and the family of Metra also educator, a lecturer also in the same university right now, and also the family of Panjitisna, also teachers family. So you know how this is not, I think, coincidence. I think this is a universe shape us, that we are now, this generation, are educators also. Yeah. So yeah, I am so happy that maybe the family of Panjitisna here, Ayu Ugi Pratiwi, and also Rahat Riningrat, this is women from the family of Panjitisna. I address them, and also family of Metra. Actually, one of the family of Metra is my college in university, Ibu Dewi Arum Metra. Now she's also pursuing doctoral degree in Yogyakarta, and she informed the family about this Zoom, and some of the family also joined. So I'm so happy. Also, I would like to address some of the people from the festival connection in Indonesia, from Club Buku Petra, Maria Pankratia, and then from Jogja, JBS, Mbak Mutia Sukma. This is the connection I have in the jejaring, or connection of the festival in Indonesia. They are so happy that more festival coming about literature and literacy. Yeah. Also Pak Nengah Januarta, thank you so much. And also I invited Ewood, from a journalist from Netherlands, my friend, who also wrote about Indonesia, and I was one of the speaker in the article of Ewood. Maybe you could also say something. Okay, let us invite audience to question session. Thank you.
If anyone wants to ask a question, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, we also have Erma from Ubud Writers and Readers Festival joining us.
That's great.
Okay, so some of the people from festival, thank you for coming.
Yeah, and if there's no question yet, I will have a question also for Annelot, because I'm also Dutch, and you were mentioning a few times the big difference between what we learn in the Netherlands about the colonial history of Indonesia, and then the difference between the oral history in Bali. So you spoke to about 100 people that gave a completely different view of what you could find in the archives in the Netherlands, you were saying. And then also the archive of Henk Franken, it's actually, you almost coincidentally bumped up on that, right? Through his son and the ring you received, and then finding him through the phone book. So I was wondering, did you hear anything from the Dutch archives to also include this material and the reports of the oral research to keep them in the Netherlands and open them up for an audience?
You refer to the oral history that I performed on Bali, you mean? Whether the National Archives... okay. Well,
yeah, and also the archives
question.
of Henk Franke, for example. I can imagine...
Yeah, no, to be very honest, my whole attic is full at the moment with all archives. I have the archives of the Dutch war veteran, Charles de Stree. I have the archive of Henk Franke. I have the archive of Siebe Lijftocht, who was actually also a critical civil servant. And I also traced him down by the phone book, or his children. And there's also an archive on the attic of his children that I could use. That was very, very interesting also, because it gives a very good look from a critical perspective of how the Dutch were actually thinking. And that is information that you don't find in the normal archive, or at least not that specific. And I also have the archive of some other people so I'm still in the middle of thinking what to do with it. Some of the archives are going back to the family, and they already found something place themselves to put them in. And for other archives, we still have to really think it through, what is the best place. And for the oral history, I haven't come across any oral history collections in the National Archive, but maybe they are already working on that. I don't know, or I didn't see it. But that would be interesting. I do know that organizations like the NIOD, and there's another organization that is basically focusing on oral history. They are sort of gathering all oral history collections, and they also asked me if I wanted to bring my collection there. But to be very honest, I still want to see for myself what is the best place to bring it. And also, it's a lot of work, because I have done all these interviews and they're on the record, but it's a lot. I also did 28 interviews with Dutch people in the Netherlands. So it's 28 interviews. I have to sort of sort it all out. And there's also, a lot of interviews that are, I don't know if they're good enough to be used by other researchers. So I want to sort of go through all the material first myself and see what is best to do with it. And also it needs to be like transcripted, because a lot of it is in half Indonesian, but also half Balinese. And then there's the translation of Friska and Suryani towards me. So, it's not, I have to find a time to really look into all this stuff and to see what is best to do with it. But I agree with you that I should do something with it, for other researchers to be able to look at it.
Yeah, well, of course, we have your book where, that's based on your findings as well. So that's important. But I was just wondering what is happening to these archives. And we spoke a little bit about Singaraja as an intellectual center. And Sonia, you as a woman from Singaraja, you can also say maybe something about the change from the city being the capital of the colonial past, but then also losing that role, and now in the north of Bali being an important city, but also not as famous or popular for tourists, for example, to visit as the south of Bali. Mm-hmm. So can you say something about the changes throughout the years?
I think Singaraja from year to year is actually growing because we have university, one of the biggest university in Bali, Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, where I work. And this university brings about 1,000 of students every year. And this university brings about the changes also in Singaraja, though it was left by the central of business, because it is moved on to south. But then it doesn't mean that the intellectual center has gone, or has dismissed from Singaraja, because we have the University of Undiksa still here. The students are from all over Indonesia, and what is it? A thousand of students, and it brings many communities of what is it? Young writers, young learners, and then many schools also. And it keeps become the education center, at least in Bali. So, but we don't have entertainment like South, yeah. So we have education centers, communities, and everything. And I myself built a community of young writers in Mahima, and the community has what is it? Has an impact to create Balinese young writers. Because we help them to publish books with what is it? With training, workshop, and learning together that we have in community. I also have a community of mothers to share insights about their story, about domestic issues. So the mothers are usually reluctant or hesitated to speak about their issues, but with this community, I what is it? Urge them to share their stories, and their stories also perform in the form of theater. And it brings about what is that, a change that Singaraja now also is what is it, growing in the context of thought, and in the context of criticism and creativity. And this festival this year is actually aims to even make it greater and greater. So to make Singaraja as intellectual center. And yeah, that is part of the plan, that we can make this what is it, stronger and stronger through this festival. And of course Saint and Ain Lot is contributing a lot, yeah, in this festival. I thank you so much. Maybe next year we can plan something bigger and more planned about the festival.
Is
Yeah,
there actually,
I
I
also
was just,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, Sonia. I was just wondering about, because you do so much work with the women in Bali, and
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
talk
yeah, yeah.
about the history and the role of Singaraja, I hear a lot of names of men. Of course, it's often
Yeah.
like that in history. But do you see, and maybe
Mhm.
Annelot can also say something about this, are there certain women in Bali who have had a very important role in the struggle for independence, and how has the role of
Yeah.
women changed throughout the years?
I think, of course, I could refer to the mother of Sukarno, yeah, the mother of Sukarno, who maybe she is not an intellectual. She doesn't go to school, but the fact that Sukarno grows to be a leader for independence of Indonesia, of course, she's mentioned in many book of Sukarno that Sukarno gained the values of being human through his mother. And I think his mother is one of the heroes that changes the tradition of not marrying a person from other tribe or other race. In this case, Sukarno's mother is Balinese, and Sukarno's father is Javanese. In the past, it's not possible, but the mother of Sukarno could make this marriage happen. And I think this is a brave decision to in that time. It is brave because also in that time not many girls are having education, uh, but then by seeing Sukarno as president and intellectual grow as intellectual, we understand that the mother is having a great role, yeah, in the first education, as a first education. other than that, I also see that Singaraja also has many what is it, intellectuals from women in this current generation. We have many professors, yeah, and then many educators like in the university. I think the legacy passed down to the current generation who what is it, who transform their life into being an educator or educators in the field of many social anthropology, linguists, and everything. So that's, I think, Sen, what I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe Annelot has something to add to this.
Yes, definitely. You had a very important role in the War of Kusamba at 1849. It was Istri Kanya. That was the sister
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
the king, and that was really, I find that very striking. That there's even a big painting in the palace of Klungkung where you can see this this battle, and then you have a central role for her on the painting. So I described that also in my book. And during the revolution, yes, there were many women fighting in the revolution. When a part of the freedom fighters sort of surrendered to the Dutch in 1948, there were about 400 women that came out of the mountain. So that was a lot. And you can also see, sometimes what I found in my research, it was quite difficult to reach the women because usually the men are the spokesperson and mostly a war is fought by men. So you are very much easily drawn towards the men. But in the end, I did manage to speak to, I think, about 20 women in total about the revolution. And one of the veterans that I interviewed, his wife was also present. That was in Ubud. And then during the conversation, he actually said, yes, to be quite honest, her role was actually more significant. So maybe you should also interview her. And then we switched to the lady, and she turned out to be how do you say that in English? A courier. And
Oh yeah,
somebody transferred
courier
messages.
Yeah, okay.
So she went, and she also brought food to the freedom fighters, and that, that's a role that's usually overlooked a little bit because it's just making food, bringing food, but in the end it is one of the most important jobs because all these fighters were in the mountains or somewhere in a place where they did not have access to anything. So they were very dependent on women bringing and making the food. And it was a very dangerous job because the Dutch military would just, shoot at people. They would just detain the women as well. And there's also stories that I found of women who had been tortured in one of these tanksies. So these things happened. And so this woman was actually explaining how she was communicating with Noeragerai and bringing food, but also transferring messages all the time, going back and forth. So I think that is a research that has to, more research has to be done, I think, on the role of women, because it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, if we have any questions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have a question now.
I want to add one thing. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jero Jempiring is also one of the heroes in Perang Jagaraga, yeah. Have you ever heard? Yeah, Jero Jempiring is also one of the heroine, yeah, that is notable in a history book. Okay. Let's invite questions.
Yeah.
So we have a hand up, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Maybe put your camera on if you like. Yes.
And I'm Irma. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so thank you everyone, and thank you for Mbak Sonia for inviting me to this session. I actually have maybe it's more general question to Ain. I know your book is in Dutch, so first question is, do you think it will be translated to English so everyone can read it? And then second question is actually me as a Balinese now, I think me and my friend, we have this conversation a lot, that we feel like actually the colonialism is still happening here in Bali, and it's just come in a new form, and we fought maybe not through war, but in a different form. Do you think like the history gonna repeat, and then is there any of the history, or what is our previous ancestors do, could be also something that we can do right now to also fight the challenge that we have, especially in the South Bali, where we actually experience now nature exploitation. For us, like young Balinese, we find like there is insecurity that we might lose our land. I think it's maybe the same back then in 1930, 1920, or 1940, and we fought, and I don't know how we can get that information from what we did previously. Maybe we can apply it in the current situation.
Oh, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
It's
Learn
interesting
from the
question,
past.
It's a very difficult question. Yeah, one of the things that I noticed that I find very interesting was that when I came to Bali, I don't know what year it was, I think maybe 2018, there was a lot of protest against the coming of a big tourist hotel or something, or karaoke bar. It was on Benoa, I think. And it was coming from an investor from Jakarta, and he wanted to build something very big there. And then a lot of local people were sort of going into protest, and it had a name. It was called reclamasi or something. I'm not sure what it exactly was, but I found it very fascinating because at that time also some of the people were actually going back to the colonial past and said, we have been fighting this before, and now we're have to do it again. So they also made this connection between the colonial past and the present times. For me, of course, it's very difficult to answer your question. What I found very striking about the Balinese resistance, it was not only using guns. It was also a very connection, very deep connection they make on a cultural and political level, that they were organizing in a way that they could be to unify the people. And of course it was very difficult, and there were a lot of pressures going on, but they undertook a lot of action to inform people about what was going on, and to organize themselves in all kind of groups, small organizations, and that's what I found very striking. Also, how they try to fund themselves. They were very creative in finding ways to resist. So I think maybe it starts with small social communities organizing themselves, or talking, maybe to communicate about these kind of issues and what can be done to address them. So that's something I can say maybe from the colonial past, but of course it's very difficult for me to answer that. Maybe Sonia has ideas on that.
You're muted. Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think we will have what is it about what Erma said about a new form of colonization. Actually, we are now have counter from decolonization movement with Saint Breimer. Also, we have I think the issue of decolonization is also getting more and more attention and impact, and the growing action of decolonization in education especially is very good to counter attack a new form of colonization. So I and Sain have some classes on decolonization, and it helps to grow the new mindset about how do we counter the new form of colonization. And one of the best way is from education, because it can shape the thought of society and shape the feeling of society about what should they do. And we should be very careful, because it is happening like vastly, massively in Bali. I hope that younger generation know that they are under attack. Actually, we have discussion about Sain about this. Yeah, Sain, you could
All the
also
time.
have a word in this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but we Sonia and I do organize decoloniality course, where we also explain what it means, and where you get also a lot of inspiration about what you can do yourself to take action. And we have another webinar. I also mentioned it in the chat. It's going on Tuesday, and there Gus Dark and Devi Asmarani are going to speak specifically about this topic. So Irma, it would be great if you can join us on Tuesday as well. They will delve deeper into this.
And we have other questions also.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we can take the first one from Nenga in the chat. It's for you, Annelot. What do you think made the Dutch not ban the Panjatishna school while another school in Denpasar was banned? What role did Henk Franken play in the Panjatishna school? And we have a third question. In the late 1930s, with the local Balinese government implement Bali Searing at school, do you think Panjatishna school also implements that program? Maybe we have a few more questions, and we're also running a little bit against the time, so maybe we can keep it a little bit short. Depends on how much time Annelot has, but I would like her to answer all the questions.
Okay, which one do you like me to answer? I'm looking now quickly at a lot of...
Yeah, so I mentioned now 3 that were mentioned by Nenga. So I guess if you can say a little bit more about the Panjatishna school and why his school didn't get banned and other schools were banned.
Okay, yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, I think the big difference between Panjatishna and Metra was, of course, that Panjatishna was a royal. He was from the Buleleng kingdom. So the Buleleng kingdom was very close to the Dutch authorities. That was probably also because Singaraja was the capital at that time of Bali. So the residence house was placed there, and there was a good contact between the royal house and the Dutch. And even though Panjatishna had a critical role and an anti-colonial role, I think that the Dutch really tried to keep him on board and to help him with whatever he wanted, but keep him in the colonial system, because the kings were very much essential to the whole colonial system. The Dutch ruled by indirect rule. So that means that they were more on the back, and they made the kings collect taxes and do stuff like that. So it was a very, even psychologically, terrible system, actually. And I think that Panjatishna was very well aware of that, and that's why he resisted it. But at the same time, he was also friends with the Dutch. You can see that his role was always to sort of manage and to keep the conversation going. And the Dutch were also trying to help him sometimes. Like he wanted to go to India, and then Henk Franken appealed to the Dutch governor, like, can he go? Can we have some funding for him to go there? So they were sort of trying to help him and at the same time trying to keep him in line with the colonial system. And Metra had a very different role because he was like just a teacher. And then the people who were not part of the royal or had other important positions for the Dutch, they were very much oppressed. And I think that the school of Tisna was also a school that was, he was not open out anti-colonial or pro-revolution. He was very much on the line of development. And that was something that the Dutch could only encourage. So that was a different, for them, I think, a different approach than Metra, who was making very clear statements against colonialism. And the Dutch saw him as a threat because of his popularity and good connection with the youth and his inspirational role in that. So I think it's because of their positions that it was different. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. Actually, the great granddaughter of Panya Tisna, who is here in our meeting, and she joined a little bit late, and she was wondering about the letter that you mentioned that Panya Tisna wrote. Can you maybe say a little bit more about that? Because she's saying the story that we learned from our parents was different, and she hopes that a new generation can learn from the Panya Tisna story and the letter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the letter I found in the archive of I think it was the archive of the resident, the governor at that time. And it's a very interesting letter. And I already thought I should also sort of copy the letter and transfer it to the family because it could be very interesting. It is in Dutch. And he explains in that letter where he's coming from. And he always also says to the governor, you already know about my ideas and about what I want in life. So they had apparently already discussed this with each other. And then Tisna says, I have to resign because I cannot do what you ask me to do. And at that time, the time that he resigned was in 1947. That was when there was a lot of pressure on the kings again to step up and set in violence against their own people. So he saw no other option for himself than to resign. And that at that time, it was a very brave thing to do because these kings were in a very difficult position because they were very much pressured by the Dutch. And they were also very much pressured, of course, by the fighters. They were sort of in between. And they knew that if they were not listening to the Dutch, the whole kingdom could fall apart because the Dutch would just... there was one king in Badung who was explicitly pro-revolution. He was just expelled. And then another king who was his big rival would get his position. So that's how, the Dutch played that out very, very, in a way that the position of these kings were very difficult. So the fact that Panya Tisna made the decision is a very strong decision, I think, and at a crucial moment also in time.
Okay, then we go to the other question. Karin, she said, I want to say a big thank you to you ladies for sharing your knowledge, organizing today's session. I'm a development professional and diversity, equity, inclusion specialist, been working on community development in East Indonesia, including Bali. And for Sonia, I'm interested to learn more about the Singaraja Festival, the long-term plan. Are you guys open to collaboration? Well, this is maybe something to discuss outside of the meeting, but it's great that you're interested. And she loves to hear the work you're doing with the young people. She's been to Singaraja a few more times.
Can talk later about the festival next year, maybe about the collaboration. And also about press of Bali Adnyana, Suryakanta, Jatayu, and other magazines, pre-independence. I would like to address this question because this is also very important from Resi Suwardana. I think we have the expert here involved in this festival also. The name is Sugilanus. So you can contact me to have deeper deeper conversation about the press in the past, Bali Adnya, Suryakanta, and Jatayu, and because my colleague Sugilanus has a lot of resources on that one. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
the question is,
Yeah.
where can I find the archive
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
yeah.
or other magazines? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think he has those ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we have a question, maybe
Okay.
one of the last ones of from Sakar. I'm wondering
Yeah.
how ethical and productive it is to compare today's struggle for remaining independent in Bali with the independence struggle against the Dutch back in the days. To me, they seem very different. Could you elaborate on that? Maybe this is a question that both of you can say something about. Do you want to start, Sonia? Is there a big difference between what is happening now in Bali and what happened in the struggle for independence? The period of time Annelot's book is about.
I think I will see it from today's perspective because I'm an educator, and I think the independence in academic is very important, and the equality among the educators also are very important to address the issue of the struggle with this coloniality issue. I think from education perspective, for example, with Sanne, Sanne is from Netherlands, and I have a lot of friends from Netherlands also. And I think that now is the collaboration time for Indonesian and Netherlands and other countries maybe to speak about our similarity rather than the differences. Yeah. And what we can do is to make a greater world by having more conversation, more ideas, more insights to bring on the table about how to make this this world in a better place. Yeah, I think nowadays is so much easier than in the past, because in the past we have so many struggles, but here now in the present time we are very much helped by the technology as well, and we can communicate with anyone from any places. And I think it's better now, and of course it is more chances for us to collaborate and do something together, like researching together, like educating together. Yeah, maybe. And also have something to say.
I find it very difficult to answer. That's why I first was a kind of hesitant to answer the question, because I study the past, and I'm not Balinese, so for me it's very difficult to make I think it's a question that Sonia is much more equipped to answer than me. So I'm not sure if it's ethical or not, or it should be done. I always think that there's a lot of things that you can learn from the past, and a lot of the structures of colonialism were deeply ingrained in a society, and of course that has a lot of impact on what comes afterwards. And that is a whole new research, of course, how all these things are linked and connected and what that actually meant. And there's a lot of scholars who are working on that. And I highlighted in my book, in the last chapter, of course, I make connections. But in the end, I think this is something for other people to elaborate on, and not for me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Annelot. And I think we have somebody joining now, but we almost finish. I will accept you, but I think it's time to share the ending words. Luckily, this got recorded, so people can can watch it later. We will share it widely. I'm going to just share my screen once again. Yeah, thank you so much, Annelot, for your time. Good luck with the research you're doing in Southern Africa. We hope to get more information about that in the coming months, years. Thank you so much, Sonia, also. And yeah, if you both want to say something and end the webinar, please be my guest.
Okay. Thank you, Anne, a lot. And thank you, Sanne. And thank you, all audience, to listen to us. And maybe for those who are wondering what we are talking about, we can share the recording later. Thank you so much. Dr. Arya, you are late.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay,
thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
See
you.
you.
See you.
Bye.
See you.